Voices in My Head is created and hosted by Yameer Adhar. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. We disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects that may arise from any information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guests' qualifications or credibility. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.
One doesn't have to be a combat soldier or visit a refugee camp in Syria to encounter trauma. Trauma just happens to you and to the people around you.
A lot of people wanted to talk about sexual assault and they wanted to know and verify or validate with someone else, is this what's happening to me normal? And where can I seek help? When I was really young, I think I was 10 years old, he came over to my birth and he stuck his tongue in my ear and was trying to, I don't know what he was doing. He was doing something that didn't feel right. My decision to move away, did it get solidified with me not wanting to be in India anymore?
I understand. Create a distance.
Create a distance. Like that was that's all I could do to keep myself safe.
Out of body experience that you feel that this is happening to someone, and this is what is trauma. This is what we call trauma, and this is what actually this episode of this podcast, and I haven't mentioned this word purposely before. This is what I wanted this podcast to be about. Is about trauma and dealing with trauma, and I think there's a lot of confusion.
I don't really want anything for me, but there are so many people who live in this world who don't have a voice, who haven't found the strength. It took me 28 years, so it's not like,
This is happening every day. It is very real, and as a parent, nothing could be scarier than this. Nothing could be scarier than this. So how should I kind of find the perfect therapist for me? Just meet a few, like interview them almost. Indians were sexually molested as a child, and it's important to remember these things because only then will you be able to do something about it. Hey, welcome to Voices in My Head. And I told you before, this is a podcast where we discuss wellness and I bring interesting people to you. The reason I love podcasting so much is I'm speaking to someone today who is sitting thousands of miles away in New York. There are no rules in this game anymore. The idea is to bring good content to you. I couldn't wait till she reached Delhi, so we're doing this using Skype and using the best technology we have at hand to give you this experience. So it's not going to be cinematic quality like the other episodes that perhaps you've been used to seeing, but it's going to be good to hear what she has to say. I'm still guilty of bringing only pretty women to the podcast, so I do apologize for that, and I will try and change that and maybe bring you some pretty men next time. Keshav, if you're listening, you're up for round 2. So I want to start by telling you that this is a person that I perhaps reconnected with 2.5 decades after I had seen her last. And she was a friend of my sister's from CJM, which is a school that I have a love-hate relationship with, or maybe I should say love-love relationship with. Ashna, how are you? Let me bring you in now.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you for doing this at night because it's in New York. It's night. What's the time there right now?
It's almost 10:30 p.m. But I'm a night owl.
I know. So and I'm clearly a morning person. So I would have been like asleep by the time if we did it then. So I want to quickly I just want to let the people listening just give a quick introduction about you. So you went to CJM in Delhi, and that's where I probably saw you last. I must have been 5 or 6 years old, and I as being the bratty younger brother, obviously I had a crush on all my sister's friends, and I'm sure you were in that long list of girls who I was first perhaps exposed to going to Columbus, and so obviously CJM in Columbus had this You know the story of CJM and Columbus.
Yes.
And so, something that I didn't know, that you went to England in 97 and then you haven't come back home since. And you went to study knitwear design.
Yes.
So that's interesting. I didn't know that you could study knitwear, as a subject. So clearly this is, we're going to be discussing that, because then after that you did a 4-year stint with a company and a 1-year internship as well, which brought you to New York.
The 4-year was a program at university. It's called a sandwich program in England. So you study for the first 2 years, then you apply in a work environment, an internship. You apply what you learned the first 2 years, and then if you're still dedicated enough, you go back and finish and get a degree.
Wow, well, you were dedicated.
I graduated with like 12 of my classmates.
Wow.
We started with 22. Some people didn't come back.
Because what, they didn't find knitwear interesting enough, or?
No, they just felt like having the internship, having the work experience, and they saw what real world looked like, what it would be to get a paycheck. So they're like, why do you need the degree to start working? So. And
after that, you went on to, so you're working with a startup, Jed Official. I checked out the website, pretty cool.
Yeah, right now I'm working with them. I moved here like pretty much right after college. I was dating my husband at the time already.
You've been married for 17 years. That's like kind of, that's long. Yeah, I
it went really fast. I don't know how that happened, but it feels like we just got married and suddenly we live here and we have 2 kids and we're very settled. And I don't know, life is good. We're happy. Like,
wow,
it's
wow.
just we've been together 20 years. So.
And you've got two boys.
2 boys, 7 and 9,
wow.
and a dog, Lucie, who's probably sleeping right next to me.
Oh wow! Yeah, I can see her in the camera.
Yeah, she's like here.
Hi.
So.
Yeah. So, yeah. But most importantly, you've done so much stuff professionally that perhaps it's too much to cover in one go. But what's obviously, and when people are going to be wondering why you're here. For those who don't already know you, and I can say that you have a bit of a cult status in Delhi for what we're going to discuss in a bit. So what's important is you are at the National Leadership Council level for RAINN. That's RAINN. That's an abbreviation for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. It's the largest national anti-sexual violence organization in the US, right?
That's right.
And you guys operate the National Sexual Assault Hotline, and that's you set it up too, right?
Yeah, it's really powerful. Like it was the first company that set up an organization that set up this hotline, because they found that a lot of people wanted to talk about sexual assault and they wanted to know and verify or validate with someone else, is this what's happening to me normal? And where can I seek help? Right. And it didn't exist. So RAINN was one of the first organizations to set this up in the US, and it's touched many people.
Wow. So I'm going to come back to that in further in the discussion. You also do a lot of volunteer work, including with Make-A-Wish Foundation, and you're a fitness freak, which I love, and nutrition is also a key area of your interest. So I love quizzing people on what they eat, how they keep themselves fit. And you run 2 marathons, right? So you run the NYC Marathon in 2016, and then you did Berlin in 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
How do you? I'd love to get into how does someone like me who doesn't run too much get into like maybe training for a marathon and obviously the runner's high and discuss those things with you.
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. I had an Achilles tendon rupture in 2013 December.
Oh my God.
And
that's painful.
I was in San Francisco. Yes, I didn't know what it was, but I was like, oh, I hear this pop. And I used to play badminton as a kid. And school, I played a lot of badminton. So it happened in San Francisco playing badminton. I just took a step and I was like, it doesn't feel good and I can't put any weight on it. Went to Stanford Hospital. They said, oh, you ruptured it. I'm like,
ouch.
Like a basketball player? And they said yes. And they gave me a little boot. And they said, when you go back to New York, see another doctor and see what they recommend. Just because you don't really live in California. And when I came back, the doctor said, oh, it's December 31st tomorrow. You want to do surgery? I'm like, no. He's like, yes, you need to, because otherwise it won't heal properly. So I did the surgery, and then they said I could start being on my foot. Like within 6 weeks, I did all the PT. But I realized when I did the surgery, and it was like such a rush to get it done because it had already been 2 weeks since I got injured, that the doctor who did the surgery was younger than me. He was like 33 years old. So when I found that out, I'm like, oh my God, either I'm getting a really big paycheck from NYU or he's so good and I'm going to be just, be running on this. And I've never run before that time. So I said, well, if he's really good, let me actually put some weight on it to see if I can run. So as a challenge to myself and NYU, I decided to do this thing called Couch to 5K. It's a program where it's a walk run and it's an app. You download it. You literally start with 30 seconds.
Yeah, I've seen Couch to 5K.
That's how I started.
It's a popular one. It used to keep popping up on something that I was probably, Instagram or something.
Yeah, it's a good app. So that's how I started. And one thing led to another. And then when you get better at doing something and 30 seconds of running became, a minute became a mile became more miles. And you're like, oh, maybe I can do something with this.
Yeah, but a marathon is more than 5K. So, it's a lot more.
Well, I decided to do it for a charity.
Yeah, and you raised like a bunch of money, right? You raised $20,000.
Yeah, for cancer research.
How did that happen? Because it's a big amount.
I think it's just a lot of people in my life, friends, family, have been touched by cancer. Even if, over the years, your parents' friends, your own friends. So every person I reached out to, it became such a personal cause. So people gave me between $20 to like, $1,500 each.
Wow.
So the numbers just added up really quickly, and I got donations from friends here, donations from friends in Europe, and family in India. So it just added up really quickly. And It felt really good to give back. And then it made me feel like I need to do this race. It's not for me, it's for those people who need more research done for cancer and for pediatrics and Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital. So
fantastic.
That was really nice.
And then you got into, are you regularly planning to run marathons every year? Or because it takes a toll on the body, right?
It does, and it injures you, and you need so much time away from your family, and you need so much discipline. You can't drink on a Saturday night if your long run's on a Sunday. I don't want to be that boring person who goes and is like, okay.
I'm that boring person every day who doesn't drink. So my wife will, you can do a separate podcast with her, how boring her husband is. But, obviously I'm in this space now, and I've just been in my own living in my own head, and that's why I needed to get the voices in my head out. So I started this. But in my detailed research of marathons, they're actually really bad for the human body. Human beings are not designed to run these distances. Only certain tribes in Africa or certain South American tribes or something have the right kind of foot design or whatever you want to call it, genetics to run long distances. We're not really designed to do that. So,
but can you imagine, like, you wake up and then you're like, oh my God, I'm going to do 13 miles today. It's such an amazing feeling.
Amazing feeling. I was like, oh my God, I have to do 13 miles today. I thought you were going to say that.
No. Once you train, like, okay, I haven't run in a long time because I've injured myself, and I'm always getting injured, but my next race is in April, which is a couple months out, and it's only a 6-mile race, so not that much. But now I'm training for 6 miles. But it's not just the running that you have to do. Running is only part of it. You only need to run 3 days a week. Right. But the other time, it's like, what else are you doing? So I do Pilates, I do strength training, I do lots of stretching and foam rolling because I get really tired.
Yeah, I understand, yeah. Do you follow this guy called David Goggins by any chance? You know who he is? Oh my God, he is this beast of a ex, Navy SEALs guy. You don't know David Goggins. You're living in New York and you don't know who David Goggins is. I have to. Okay, I'm gonna tell you. I will recommend his book to you. I'll send you some details on him. So he's this guy who's this ex Navy SEAL. And he's like a superhero, right? He's a superhero of trying to kill himself and just make his life so difficult, and that's how he's developed. It's like it's everything is like, what would Goggins do in this situation? So I have a reminder in my phone, which shows up every morning along with other stuff, which says what would Goggins do. So every time I'm contemplating doing something difficult, I say, what would Goggins do? And Goggins would just make it the hardest. He would do the marathon with a
Western
100-pound,
or
100-pound bag on his back and cut one leg off. Like, he's that kind of a guy. So I think for everyone, Goggins is a guy that they need to follow. But so coming back, Pilates is something you've been doing for a while, or?
Yeah, a couple of years. I really enjoy it.
So because I like yoga, I'm not a Pilates person, so.
Yoga is different. Pilates is more lengthening, strengthening, and toning. But really, it's lengthening. It gets muscles in your body that you can't get with regular weightlifting, and the weight that you might hold when you're doing Pilates is 2 pounds, and
but
it's 4 pounds total.
I've tried Pilates, and it's like, I always think it's like assisted yoga, and people get a bit angry at me when I say that. But
no, have you done it on a machine?
I've done it on a machine.
You need about 3 classes to learn the machine, and you need a really good instructor.
And I
so maybe you need to come to New York, and I
will do that. I will do that. But now I want to come to the main area of discussion. So can you tell me about so when we were discussing and how I kind of perhaps reconnected with you before I wrote to you was, there was some activity on social media a few years ago, particularly which blew up in Delhi because it concerned an incident that happened with you. When I came across it, I immediately remembered who you were, because before that, is no mention, you've been away for years, since 97 you've been away from here. And I guess I don't think my sister has been too in touch with you either. So when your name popped up, and I was shocked to read what I did read on social media, and I just like maybe you to touch upon that and just speak about what happened, and the further we can delve into a lot of things after that. Because I want to talk about the book that you recommended, and that's one of the best books I've ever read. But I'm gonna come to all those things in a minute.
When I was really young, I think I was 10 years old. I was going to a mundan of my cousin. My cousin's grandmother lived in Kanpur, so this mundan ceremony was happening in Kanpur. So this is really a long time ago. And I remember that we, as a family, this is my mom's side of the family, we all took a train together, because I don't know why we didn't fly. I guess you couldn't at the time. And it was a night train. It was like a sleeper compartment. So all of us had different, areas and berths to sleep in. So this is the first incident that I'm describing. My uncle, who's my Masi's husband, Sanjeev Batra, very well known in Delhi, he came over to my berth, and he stuck his tongue in my ear and was trying to, I don't know what he was doing. He was doing something that didn't feel right. So I pretended to be asleep, and then that incident finished, and it was over. And I was so shocked and so young, I did not really know what had happened.
You were 10?
I was 10. Yeah, because my cousin's 10 years younger than me. 8 years. During that trip in Kanpur, he attempted something else. He tried to touch me inappropriately, and I remember running away from that room where he saw me in, and he tried to shut the door, and I was like, this is not right, I'm running out of here. And this was like the more innocent stuff that he tried to do. And then over the years, any opportunity that he had, if we were ever alone, which were very few, but there were 2 other incidences that I remember quite vividly. And it's really strange, like there are a lot of things about my life that I don't remember in great detail. But this stuff, what happened to me, I remember like it happened to me yesterday. I remember details of that day like it was yesterday.
And that has to be traumatic, because I'm feeling so uncomfortable with what you just started saying. And I didn't even know this.
I haven't really told anyone the specifics. Maybe my parents, my husband, but I haven't ever talked about it publicly. So people don't really know what the extent of this molestation was. And
this continued for how long? From
till I was about 14 or 15.
And you obviously never told anyone.
I did tell some of my friends when I was older. I did tell my brother when I was older that this happened. But I think just the advice that I got at that time, everyone comes from a place of, with the information that you have on hand at that point is when you make a recommendation or a suggestion or you give advice. And at that time I was like, don't say anything. You're going to ruin all of these family relationships. And so I just kind of didn't say anything to my parents. And he touched me inappropriately another 2 times after that when I was older, and it went a lot further than it should have. And ever since the last time it happened, I just decided I'm never going to let myself be alone with him in a room anymore. I will never let myself be alone in a car with him anymore. I will not hang out with him and his wife alone anymore, because he would find opportunities just to be with me and make a move and do something inappropriate. But I didn't say anything after that, at 16, 15, whatever. I didn't talk about it after that. And then I just forgot about it. I just moved on, lived life, and did all the things I wanted to do. And sometimes I wonder, in a way, my decision to move away, did it get solidified with me not wanting to be in India anymore?
Because create a distance.
Create a distance. That's all I could do to keep myself safe. Because I had to see this person socially, because I hadn't said anything. I had to say hello. I had to touch his hand. He had to give me a kiss on my cheek. I had to do all this, and inside I was cringing and just so uncomfortable. But I put up with it. I put up with it for years. And he probably always thought that, he never said anything like, if you tell anyone, I'll threaten your family or I'll hurt them. There was never any of that. I think it was just assumed that I would never say anything. He just assumed that I would not have the strength to come out with this. And just living here, being away from home, I'm a person of extreme. When I decide to do running, I don't just run 1 mile. I'm like, why stop at 1 mile? Let's go all the way. So this is how I am. I live in those. I think I just put myself in something, and then I'm so busy and immersed that it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to think about other things, other voices, other things that you might have in your head that you don't want to deal with, because you're so focused on something else. So I live my life that way. If I get on a project, I will give it my 120%. If I get on a charity, I will give it my 150%. And after a while, all that gets exhausting too, because your body is like a balloon. If you have anger inside, at some point your balloon needs to pop. And I would be angry a lot. I've been married with my husband, we've been married for 17 years. We've been together 20. He didn't know about this.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, when did these memories kind of start resurfacing and cause?
I mean, they were always there, but intimacy was a big factor. It would come up a lot when I was trying to be intimate with my husband, because it's those visions and I really felt like it was not my body. I felt like I was on a bed, but I'm not really there. This is not happening to me. I'm here. My husband and I are on this bed, but that person on that bed is not me, which is a very surreal experience.
So this is what I've learned through the book that you also recommended, and through some of my own earlier, research in this subject for various reasons, is that people who have, gone through some sort of sexual abuse or violence or been molested, and women, and it's the same with women and men, they tend to start disconnecting from their body, and they start, especially when they're even in a safe relationship with someone they love and they want to get intimate with, it starts becoming an issue, because you automatically start picturing things that perhaps happened to you that you didn't want or you didn't consent to. And you get this, exactly what you're saying, this kind of out of body experience that you feel that this is happening to someone, and this is what is trauma. This is what we
Yep.
call trauma, and this is what actually this episode of this podcast, and I haven't mentioned this word purposely before. This is what I wanted this podcast to be about. Is about trauma and dealing with trauma, and I think there's a lot of confusion about what trauma is. Trauma is if I, get my hand cut off or blown off, or if I have an accident, there's physical injury trauma, and then there is the main trauma is in your head. So, so I just want to come back to you were saying you used to get angry a lot, and
Yes. I used to be really mad. Like, it could be something really silly. Like, why did you leave the coffee cup here?
you just
And,
used to get blew up because of
Just
something
get
like
blow
that.
up. Yeah. Like, it was so, my husband said to me, your response to such a small thing is not in proportion to what we're talking about. Maybe you need therapy. And that's the first time I was like, oh my God, I can get help. But wait, what am I getting help for? Because in order to get help, you have to first acknowledge that there is something that you want to deal with. And that was really hard for me too. But again, when I commit to something, I give it my 110%. So I was like, yes, I'm going to see a therapist. My husband's like, what? I'm like, I'm going to go for therapy. So I emailed a therapist that I had found online, and I said, let's do a trial and see. She was an art therapist, and I really enjoy art. So I said, I want to come and talk to you about my anger issues. And then I said, I was molested as a child, and I think I have a lot of anger because of it.
And how long did it take for you? How many sessions did it take for you to reveal that to her? Do you
I
remember?
could not talk to her. I mean, I saw her every week, sometimes twice a week. But the twice a week sessions were really hard because it was just too many emotions. But it took me a year and a half before I could actually even tell her what happened to me.
It took you a year and a half.
Yeah.
So which is what is it's important, and I also learned this from the podcast episode that I did with Sheena. I don't know if you've seen that one, Sheena.
Yeah,
Pearl.
I did.
Is therapy it takes time. It's a process. You are meeting a completely unknown person who you have to. It's a process. It takes time. It took you 1.5 years, and I actually I'm not surprised it took you 1.5 years, because you were sharing something so difficult and something so. I mean, I'm actually struggling for words because what you said first when you told me what happened to you, it's still kind of floating around in my head because I wasn't expecting that at all. So it's and so once you told her what was next, and was she using all various techniques of therapy, or was it focusing on art therapy?
We did art, we did a lot of talking. I don't like talking so much. It's just another way to just shut down, right? If you don't talk about a problem,
I understand.
it doesn't exist. But I'm a very chatty person. Like, socially, if you meet me in a setting, I could be the liveliest person in the room. I'm very outgoing. Everyone knows me everywhere, but no one knows me.
Yeah.
I don't let them in. I don't let people in. I have a big problem with this. So communicating with someone at such a personal level was really hard for me. Like, to just be so vulnerable and not worry about what she's thinking
Judgment.
or feeling judged. But she's not there to judge you, she's there to guide you. But
Absolutely.
she had always said to me that it's like peeling an onion, and it's always a lot harder in therapy the first 6 months, and then it gets easier. Because a lot of times you deal with your family. Like, we started with like, how was your relationship with your parents? How was your childhood? And I'm like, it was all great, right? But it gets a lot harder after that. So we did a lot of different things. We did EMDR, just different techniques that she used. I did a lot of hypnosis that I really enjoyed. It's not the hypnosis that you see in a movie.
Yeah, I know what
it's
you
kind of
mean.
like
Yeah.
guided hypnosis.
Yeah. So I've also done that, and I have my own views about it. It's not like dance like a monkey when I snap my finger, then you start. So that's what everybody thinks when you think of hypnosis, because you've seen these illusionists and mind game guys do this, but that's not what it is. So you did hypnosis, and what?
Yes, it really helped me. It helped me feel grounded and calm. But I think the biggest thing that came out pretty quickly after talking to her was, what is holding you back? Like, we've talked about this, we're trying to address the issue. I said to her, well, I haven't told my husband, and I really want to tell my parents. And I went back and forth about wanting to tell my parents because of, in my head, the ramifications that might happen if I did this. What would it mean for my mom and her sister's relationship? What would it mean for my Masi and her sister? Like, what would it mean for everyone within the family? I was so worried about the relationships that sometimes I forgot to feel like this was about me, and I'm not the one who did anything wrong.
Yeah,
I was a
absolutely.
victim.
Yeah.
And it's not my place to correct someone else's mistakes. So if I gave myself the strength to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to tell them. And I think by telling them, I feel like a weight would be lifted from my shoulders. So I told my husband first. I started therapy about 2.5 years ago. And I told my husband first in September 2017. And
What was
he
his
was, of course, very
reaction?
supportive. He was shocked that we had been together for so long, and he had no idea. And he was just so flabbergasted, and he actually guessed who it was. I said, it's someone in my family, and he just named this guy, and I was like, yep, that's him. Because he said he's the sleaziest person I know. But he was very supportive, and I said, I just need, to go through therapy. Can you, let's work on how will I tell my parents. So we talked a lot about it. My parents were going to come out. They actually came out that summer, but I couldn't tell them. So then I said, okay, I'm going to tell them on the phone. Phone is easier, right? It's not face to face. So one night,
God, I can't even. I cannot even imagine what that conversation goes like. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I started with a glass of wine. I called them one evening, and I usually don't call my parents during the week. I usually talk to them every Sunday morning. That's our thing. But I was like, this cannot be a
American
Sunday morning
of you,
call.
but anyway.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, can't be Sunday morning. It has to be when the kids are not here. Like when it's just me and I can just have my time. I called, they didn't pick up, and I was like, oh, I just drank a glass of wine. That liquid courage was like really there, and I was going to do this. So the next morning, my dad called me. He's like, everything okay? Like you called us. So I actually told my dad, since he called me back, and we're pretty close. I said I wanted to share something that happened with me, and like a typical dad, he's like, and like just like shocked, right? Like so there was no reaction. It was like just shock. And then I spoke to my mom, and they were shocked because there were times when they were nearby. They were in the next room, at least on 3 occasions they were in the next room,
Right.
or in the same area.
Yeah, I
so
understand.
how could they have missed it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm a parent too, and I can only, if something happens, I'm like, this is I'm at home today. His room is right behind this wall. Of course, he's at preschool right now. But if something were to happen, and I learned years later, this is what I keep talking about this, and on the podcast as well. As a parent, you blame yourself for anything, the little pinprick that your child gets. You want to find a way to blame yourself because why couldn't I? And this is something that is so difficult to. I mean, I really don't know what I would just lose my shit. Honestly, I would, as a parent, I would lose my shit because I don't think I have the strength. But I know your dad, because I know your dad. I don't know your mom that well, but I know your dad because we did some work together also on the Old Columban Association. Yeah. Because my boss, we used to work with him. They were on the Old Columban Trust. So you said he kind of just was internalizing it, and he shut off for a while.
Yeah, just that day. And then I spoke to my mom, and then it was just so much to process, and there were so many tears from my side.
I understand.
It's a grieving process. It's like you have to let it out. You have to just, first you be sad, you can be depressed, but then you're like, I need to come out of this funk, and I need to get myself going, right? So I went through all the stages. but I came out in the end, like, I wasn't ever like questioning whether my parents would believe me or not. I know my parents, and that was never, it was just, oh my God, I'm going to ruin an entire side of my mom's family, basically. I would ruin everyone's relationships, right? And
How important?
but it wasn't on me. But it's still a lot because.
And then this was. So you told your parents, and then you came out on social media, and you know, a lot of people, and it's probably true. You were the first, perhaps Indian or Indian origin person with the Me Too movement that just started or was going to start, and you used that to come out on social media. Was that soon after you told your parents?
Yes, I told my parents in January or February 2018. And you know, my parents met him and his wife. They had conversations. I spoke to my aunt after that on the phone because I wanted her to hear it from me as well.
So your parents cordially confronted. Is confronted and the right word?
Different. Yeah, they just said, Ashna said this, what do you have to say? And he says, oh, she's making it all up. It's not true. I spoke to his wife, who is my Masi. I've known her all my life. She's my youngest Masi. Like, we used to hang out all the time growing up. We had a lot of fun growing up. So she said that I was mistaken and confused.
Right.
Her words.
And did that make you angry again?
It made me pretty mad, and I gave her a very vulgar description of what he did that I cannot repeat on the podcast.
Yeah, that's fine.
I said something like this that happens to you is not a misinterpretation of what happened. So I'm okay. You know, people have to make their own choices.
But you can imagine the disbelief, for a wife
of course.
I mean, I would not want to believe that about my wife or my anybody that I'm related to.
No.
So it's easy.
Or your friends, you're like,
it's easy to say that no, this didn't happen. She's confused. It was too long ago. There has to be some mistake.
Yeah.
Maybe she's on some drugs. I don't know.
Yeah. They said all that. Hallucinating drugs. But you know,
and then what?
I didn't come out with it to say, oh, I'm asking for money from you. I'm asking for this.
Of course not.
But that's usually, like, I didn't want anything. All I wanted was for him to acknowledge what he did to me.
You wanted closure. I understand.
I just wanted closure. I just wanted to move on. And for me, a big thing here was I came at a time where Bill Cosby was accused of these 60 women who came out against him, and slowly they were coming out.
Yeah, could you believe Bill Cosby? Like, he was he was like a cuddly teddy bear. I used to watch him. Yeah. So
that the news became very hard to watch. Me Too had just started here with Harvey Weinstein. I could not look at social media. I could not look at New York Times on my phone. I could not look at the news TV channel. It would just trigger, and I would get really. It felt like it was personal. It felt like it was happening to me all over again. I hadn't moved on like enough to be able to deal with all this stuff. But after I told my parents, I went to England that February with my family, and they said, can we also come? We really want to see you. So we talked in person. We hung out. And you know, they said, what do you want? I said, I just want him to acknowledge. And I want him to fess up to what he did. And my uncle and aunt were willing to come here to New York to meet me. And I said, why would I want to meet him? I have nothing to say to this person anymore. I have put up my nice face to him. I have said my hellos. I have been respectful. I'm done. I don't owe this to this person anymore, because I don't need to pretend to be, you know, a very kind, loving, happy person when he's caused me all this anguish. Like, why do I need to be like this? I can actually behave the way I really feel. I just want to ignore him. He doesn't deserve my time. He doesn't deserve my attention. He doesn't deserve anything. So, that was a while ago.
And then you came out on social media after that?
I came out on social media in April. I decided I was so angry.
2018?
18.
So,
it's almost 2 years ago. I decided, well, I don't really want anything for me, but there are so many people who live in this world who don't have a voice, who haven't found the strength. It took me 28 years, so it's not like, you know, I just decided to come up with the story right when it happened.
Yeah.
But I know what toll it took on my life.
For sure, for sure.
I know it made me the person I am today, so I'm grateful for who I am, but I would never want this to happen to anyone else. And if I can be a little voice for someone else, if I can just be inspiration for someone else, that's all I wanted to do. So I decided to set up a charity for this organization, RAINN, that you talked about, and we raised about over $20,000 for RAINN as well.
So 20,000 you did for cancer research earlier, and another 20,000. Yeah. So I remember. So that's when this kind of happened, and I found what you wrote on social media, and it was all over Delhi, and it was personal, because I felt that I always tell people that we grew up together, not just because you're famous in Delhi, but
for all the wrong reasons.
But just generally, for anybody, any of my sister's friends, we all grew up together, right? So I was a kid, you guys were the older sisters, or the older hot cute girls that I used to like, or the word hot didn't even exist back then, but so I remember I saw your RAINN campaign, and you're running for this, and I don't know what, maybe I used to be employed back then, so I was feeling rich, so I donated $100, I remember. And then I got the email from you, and I think that was it. It was forgotten after that.
Yeah,
but
it was 2 years ago. Literally, it was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, but what wasn't forgotten was that this is very real, child abuse and sexual abuse, and this and in India more so. You've got these absolutely
patriarchal.
Yeah, you've got that, and you've got the most brutal incidents against women and kids that are happening every day. That we've heard of this Nirbhaya case. Those guys are still waiting to be hanged. They're going on telling I'm not an advocate for the death penalty, or neither am I. I'm agnostic about death penalty, but this is constantly in your face. This is happening every day. It is very real, and as a parent, nothing could be scarier than this. Nothing could be scarier than this, and how much can you do to protect your kid? Beyond the point, you can't. But what you can do is acknowledge that this is not, this is not something you see on Netflix, or this is not
someone else's problem.
Yeah, this is someone else's problem. Or this can't happen to me, because it does happen to you, and it's happening to people around you, and it may even happen to your own kids, and it may have happened to any of us. People like you had the strength to come out with it. Others may live with it for the rest of their life, get traumatized, live with that trauma, and that trauma is going to manifest in destroying their relationships, in doing hundreds of things. So you then you did RAINN, and then you did I want to talk a little bit about the book that you recommended to me, and which is I'm going to recommend, and I'm going to link it in the podcast as well. Every single person should. I've heard the audiobook twice, and I'm planning to get the physical copy as well, and this is the first time I want to get a physical copy of the audiobook, because I want to underline stuff and make notes, because it has really taught me a lot. Not that I'm wanting to study about this subject beyond a point, but I just found it very interesting. The book is called The Body Keeps Score. It's by Van der Kolk, Dr. Basil Van der Kolk. And you did a course with him, right? You did a course in which he was physically teaching it?
So a couple years ago, when I was going through the therapy and I was talking to my therapist, I said, what are the other things that I can do? At one point, I had I was diagnosed with the post-traumatic stress disorder,
PTSD, yes.
Yeah, which is very common in when you're molested or you have sexual trauma as a child.
Sure.
It's the same effect as when someone goes to war and they come back and they keep seeing these images over and over in their head when they close their eyes. It's basically the same thing that can happen. You keep seeing images of the perpetrator in your mind.
Or what happened. It's like flashbacks.
Of what happened.
Right?
It's like flashbacks, and yeah.
And you're reliving. So it's so interesting, and I hate to interrupt you at this moment, but it's what I didn't know about post-traumatic stress is that literally it's not just in your mind, because the mind recreates the physical sensation in the body. So you have to relive the whole episode or the whole series of episodes, and you live it again and again and again, and your body is gone into this permanent state of fight or flight, which is the stress response, and this health wise, mental health and physical health wise, would take such a toll on one's body. So I'm amazed that actually you've been able to, you managed to function for so long with this kind of stress, and you don't need to, it's not that you only learned about, your body was under stress, it was and your mind and body were under stress a lot. So yeah, please continue about the course you were telling me.
So my therapist recommended the book, The Body Keeps Score, amongst a lot of other books. But I really enjoyed reading this book because there was a lot I could connect about myself in that book. So then my therapist said, this doctor, he teaches courses sometimes at Kripalu, which is a yoga retreat place in Massachusetts.
Right.
You should see if they have a course. Maybe you can do a workshop with him. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I can do this. This is good. Because I was just trying to find ways to just cope. I wanted to be around people who had been through this to see how they survived. I didn't end up going to any group therapies, but I was very curious as to how do people function in the world after coming out with a story like this? Because it's one thing to internalize it and keep it within the four walls of your house. It's another thing to have the whole world know what happened to you and then have to live your life every day.
So you wanted a support group.
I wanted a support group. I just wanted to see what people did to make their life a little better, a little richer, or they weren't thinking about this at all times. So when I read the book, I was like, well, this book is interesting, and I know that he does courses, and I found one at Kripalu, which is my therapist recommended. And it was a 5-day workshop. It was pretty much all day. Like, we would get a break for lunch. We'd start at like 8 in the morning for breakfast. The course would start at 8:30. We would get a lunch break at 12:30. And then 1:30 again, we would start again. You had moments throughout the day to do yoga twice a day if you chose to, or take a walk in their amazing garden. You could mingle with the people that were in the course. So the course was a lot of, the people who were taking the course were either professionals who were doing it for advancing their credit for continuing education. So there were a lot of therapists in the class. But then there were also people like me, survivors, who wanted to just figure out, what do we do? How do we move on? Like, what do we need to do? And how do we not let this claim our lives? So I found the course really, really helpful. It was the first time that I had actually been away from like my whole family and gone away on my own for something for me for 5 days. I was like, wow, this is like not really the real holiday I thought this would be. It was very hardcore and intense. There were a lot of workshops. You had to rely on people blindfolded. You had exercises to do with random people that you had never met, and just trust them. Just give, like, to that blindfold, give your hand, let them lead you, and fall back and let them catch you.
That could, I can say, for the professionals doing it would have been easier. It can't be easy for someone who's actually been traumatized, because the whole problem is trust. How do you get yourself to trust anyone again?
Yeah. How do you look at people when you're just walking in a room? How do you... I don't like, personally, like, I'm a very happy, outgoing person, but I don't like a lot of proximity to my body. Like, I want people to be a little far away from me.
I absolutely understand what you're saying.
I don't want the hugs. Like, okay, if I really know you and you really want a hug, I'll give it to you, but willingly, you're not getting a hug and a kiss from me.
And that's it. And there is a very solid underlying reason behind that.
Yeah.
So a lot of, this explains behavior, right? So you learned, but this course saved your life in a way, didn't it? Or it's changed your life, because this book has changed my life. This book has changed my life in the sense that I just feel that I know things that everyone should know, and it prepared me also to be able to do this podcast, because when I wrote to you, I wrote honestly, and usually now I'm a positive person. I used to be a pessimist, but I'd like to believe I'm an optimist. When I wrote to you, I was like, she's never going to say yes. Why will she want to? Why will anybody want to relive this again? And I just shot off an email to you, like I shot off to a lot of people that I wanted them to come on the podcast. And I was like, she's never going to say yes. And you replied and said yes. I said, oh my God. I said, she said yes. Now I said, and the reason I was worried to do the podcast with you was because I just felt that I won't be able to do justice to it. Because I just felt this is such it's a very serious subject. What happened to you was very serious. The implications are very serious, and the learnings that need to come out of this podcast are very serious. So it is only because of our chat, and you recommended this book. Only after I read this book and heard this book twice, that I felt that I had some capability to maybe do some justice to this. Because I mean, people need to understand. And this is, when we discussed offline, we are not doing this to, or you are not doing this to name and shame anyone. The idea, this podcast is about trauma, how to live with trauma, how to get over it and make a life beyond trauma. And you are a survivor. You're not a victim, and you've never claimed that you're the victim. And as you said, what I would like people to get out of this podcast is how to become survivors, not be victims. Because in my head, I was a victim of many things for many years until I didn't get myself out of that mentality that no, I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor of this. So I can survive this. I can only when you start thinking of yourself as a survivor, or you find the tools like maybe this book, like going to therapy, like getting the right help. Can you get out of being from a victim to moving on to being a survivor, and then being you're doing this now from not being able, or to not have told anybody, to now the world is going to hear you and learn from you and your story, and for you to be on the national leadership level at RAINN. This is a huge jump, and no victim would ever be in this position. It's only that you have, so this I could only wish that everyone can get themselves to reach or aspire to reach where you have reached.
I think the biggest thing, Yameer, is being open to having conversations with friends. So like if you have a friend who's shared something, or you feel like something's off, don't give up after asking them once. I think the people who stood out for me the most were the people I might have shared, like, oh, I was molested as a child, and I said I can't talk about it right now. But it's really hurting me, and I'm coping and I'm dealing with it. But then the same friend a week later would come back and say, I'm here for you. Are you ready to talk now? I would love to support you. I think also we feel like, oh, we don't need help. It's our human nature. We don't want to be dependent on anyone. We don't want to reach out to anyone. I think it's okay to feel, I want to talk to someone. It's always easier to talk to someone that you know. But sometimes it's equally easy, like when you're on an airplane, you can share your life story with someone you don't know at all. So pick your moments, but actually find the one that you feel like will give you a place to move forward from. I just feel like you cannot be stuck in a place. You have to see where you're going. I always knew, like, once I called out my uncle, the story was not about me. The story was making sure that people understood these things happen to people in all kinds of households, including ours.
Oh, yes.
The story was, just because I have talked about this 2.5 years ago, it doesn't mean that it's not in me every single day.
Of course.
It's hard, and I think and I'll be honest, like one of the reasons I haven't come home in 3 years, which is the first time ever, is ever since I came up with this story. I don't know if I'm ready to come home again. If home is even mine, like I have to come back and claim it. So I might be back in December, I'm thinking, but I just haven't found that courage yet, because I feel like I need a lot of rules and parameters for what would make that trip very comfortable for me. But I'm old enough, and I think a little wise enough to like tell my parents, okay, this is the boundaries. These are people I want to see, people I don't want to see. I don't want any big dinners. Like, there are things that I can do that I think will help me.
Please put me on the list to see you.
You will see me. But it's just finding coping mechanisms. I don't go for therapy every week anymore. I don't need it. I go once a month now.
I think it's the other way
just
around.
as
I
a
think
check-in.
you are providing therapy for everyone who's going to be watching this or hearing this podcast, and I know that for sure. I know that for sure, and this is why I wanted you here. Coming back to the course, is there anything that some things that you can remember that you want to tell everyone that because when I read this book, there's certain instances that keep popping on, and I keep telling my wife, I keep telling my mother, whoever, that did you know that this thing works like this, or did you know that this is this could be a manifestation? Because a lot of things I checked, or a lot of things I realized about my own behavior, and why I also am going to therapy, or started going to therapy. Of course, Sheena helped me to get that last push, and I tried to go before, but I just felt that even though I'm in a really good place, I just want to go to therapy to, just, my physiotherapist, for example, tells
Like
me
a
that,
check-in.
yeah, so my physiotherapist tells me, and I learned this from him, is that most people go to the physiotherapist when something is broken or when you sprain something, but the top athletes and actors and models, whoever who want to keep themselves physically fit, they actually go, and the right thing to do is go to a physiotherapist
Every week.
when everything is good, so that nothing ever goes bad. So from that aspect, I want to start going to therapy, or started going to therapy, and to learn that a lot of things that in my behavior are perhaps from some past childhood, or some other trauma. Like for me, I was fortunate enough to never have to go through something like what you went through, but school brings traumatic memories to mind, and that is evident in all the podcasts that I've done when we've spoken about school or school life. Maybe it was being bullied a bit, or maybe it was, I don't know what it was, maybe it was my worst days. I hate remembering my school days, that they're unhappy days, unhappy memories. I didn't have a good time in school, and that's okay. My wife loved her school, that's great. Everybody's experience is individual to them. So for me, school brings back those traumatic memories. I hate thinking of school. Maybe it was a pressure of exams for a student like me who never wanted to study, or who had a problem, or who's partially dyslexic, where the words used to jump around when that sometimes those letters interchange when I'm reading, and that's also trauma. So it doesn't have to be that you were sexually assaulted or molested. Small things sometimes as a kid can remain as trauma in your mind. So you didn't answer my question. Was there something that you
in the workshop, right?
Something in the workshop that you just end up telling everyone about?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that I found really helpful in the workshop, at that time I wasn't very open to participating in the workshop verbally, but I would do all the exercises with a partner, but not in a big group setting. I wasn't so comfortable. But the one that I did participate in is one where at the end, it was almost towards the end of our session of with this guy, is that we basically got an opportunity to confront our perpetrator. So if you could sit down and pretend, and they would put him there, and I would have a conversation, a dialogue with this person to address him.
A physical person, or like some sort
Yeah,
of
a physical person, of someone from our group.
That
like
can't be easy. Yeah.
No.
Sounds. Yeah.
And for that person to have to just listen to your feelings, and sometimes it got physical. Someone could get pushed, or that was very powerful and cathartic in its own way, because it made me realize, like, I don't have to hold this. If I really choose to, I can come to India, I can sit down with him and my aunt and have a conversation and tell him what he did to me was not okay, what he made me feel all these years was wrong, and really, I don't know, have a heart to heart, but one-sided, because there's nothing that he can say that would make me feel better. But I feel like I did that also with my therapist. Therapists use a lot of props, and one of the props that they use is they would put like 2 stuffed animals, where they pretend like this is the person and this is his wife. What do you want to say to them? I know it sounds a little crazy that you're like talking to a stuffed animal, but actually having that conversation and actually being able to say something out in the open is really powerful. So I would tell people that if they can't address it to the person that this is about or has happened to, I would recommend that they pretend like these people are in the room there and say what they want to. It's almost like writing a letter, but instead of writing the letter, you're actually doing it with words and actions.
So it's like a role play almost?
It's a role play, yeah. And it's very...
But like a one-sided...
One-sided, yeah.
Yeah, like there's no...
Yeah.
You're just getting it out of your system.
Your side out, yeah. And that really helped. And I think, like you said, it's, healing is a journey. It's never going to be perfect, but and you can have moments where it's up and down. And sometimes when I look at the news and I see more Me Too cases and more, it does trigger something in me, but I've also learned to recognize the triggers. And there have been times, like when my Facebook was hacked last April.
Your Facebook was hacked?
His Facebook was hacked last April, and a post was posted that said that everything that I had said thus far about my uncle is not true. I had lost my mind and I made up a story. I'm so crazy. Why did I do it? Something like that. It didn't even sound like me. So I got really triggered. I was really angry at first, because I could not believe that someone would stoop to this level to then do what they did, and then to have to come out of it. So I decided to go back to therapy. I was like, okay, I need weekly sessions. So I think it's important to recognize that sometimes you go in for check-ins, but sometimes it's like when you're feeling not so well, you should go to the doctor more often to make sure you're okay. So I was doing weekly sessions. Then when I felt like, okay, I have everything under control, I was back to my once a month sessions. So I think it's okay to also find help when you need it. And I also encourage people not to always go with the first therapist that they might meet or find.
Okay, so how should I kind of find the perfect therapist for me? Just meet a few, interview them almost?
Yeah, you have a session with them and you'll feel, it has to be a conversation. Therapy is usually, a lot of it's about you. When you say, well, what do you think? The therapist will say, well, what do you think? You're paying me. You're here for yourself. But the kind of therapist that I need is, I actually want an opinion.
Okay.
I actually want someone to talk back to me. I want to be challenged a little bit. I don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to sit on the sofa and have a 1 hour conversation, which is more one-sided, and they're just going, and I'll repeat the story and So I think it really depends what kind of therapy. There's so many different kind of therapists. There's dance therapy.
This is a really good recommendation.
Music therapy. There's art therapy. There's just so many things that you can do. And there are two types of therapists, right? One is psychiatrist and one is psychologist.
Yeah, I also learned this. Thank you, Parul, for
You learned
for
this,
one.
okay. Yeah. So, and one of them that can prescribe medicine and the other one cannot.
I learned this recently.
But you recently. But you can go to either one. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go to the right now I don't go to the art therapist. I go to a different doctor. I actually he's a psychiatrist, but I don't take medicine. I just go to him because he's Indian, and I feel like having the ability to talk to someone from your own culture who gets a lot of the references is a lot different than me just talking to the other therapist I was talking to earlier.
So
she was great.
This is a pro tip for sure, guys. Don't just go, unless a tip for me, don't just go to any therapist. Maybe interview a few of them, see who you maybe connect with, see who works for you, and maybe even try different. So art therapy I learned about from my first episode of the podcast was from Zina and Zoya. Zoya does a bit of art therapy, so I learned about art therapy. So maybe try saying I didn't know there's dance therapy, there's music therapy.
Yeah.
This is interesting. So I've definitely this is a great recommendation that's come out of our discussion. I want to talk a little bit about trauma and how it manifests. So in you, would you say that the primary manifestation of your trauma was, primary, which was visible to the rest of the world, was maybe anger issues?
Anger. Yeah,
not
anger,
depression, anxiety, some sort of self-harm. Did you ever, think of these things?
No. I did there were days where I was really, really low, but again, I'm a very strong-willed person. So I never let myself stay in that space or that funk per se. I keep really, really busy. I used to keep really, really busy. Less now, but it was only because those empty moments in my day just had these flashbacks coming to me, and I just could not deal with like having these images. So if you fill your 24-hour day and 12 hours you're awake, you keep every 12, like the 12 hours are really, really, really busy. You have no time to think. You just go from one project to the other.
You're running away.
Yeah, it's not good. You're running away.
From something.
Yeah.
But you didn't run away for long, but you did confront those demons eventually.
And then I started running. So I don't know. It's related.
Yeah. So
but I think
so would you say the primary manifestation was in anger? So I think if that's a good tip as well, or that's a good thing to get out of the podcast, is if suddenly you getting angry disproportionately. And sometimes I feel like I'm like that. My
could be
response
irritable.
is disproportionate, or something small just triggers me, and I'm like really irritated about it for no reason. Perhaps it's connected.
So the journey of healing, I forgot to mention this earlier. I find that the journey of healing for me personally was very helpful for me to be able to give back to others.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done it in a lot of different ways. I did a charity for RAINN. I got a dog. The dog is now a certified therapy dog. So Lucie and I, she's a goldendoodle.
Wow.
She's a 1.5 years old. So we will be starting school and hospital visits quite soon.
So what will she be? What does a therapy dog really do?
So a therapy dog, basically, I can go into, say, for example, a public school in New York that is a school for the deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And they will bring the kids into a room, and the kids will get an opportunity to pet her for those who want to pet her. I could go into a school that has a program for children who have learning disabilities like dyslexia.
Okay.
They can read to Lucie.
Okay.
I can go to a hospital where these patients are getting cancer treatment, chemotherapy, on the oncology floor, and they can pet her. She just brings a smile to their face. It's a 1-minute visit. It's 1 hour. So I'm going to be doing that twice a week with her. So I think for me, the journey was really about giving. How do I give back to? It's not about making money. It's about telling my story, but spreading the word. But the healing for me really was in the giving back. So joining charitable organizations, trying to think about what I want to do next. For me, maybe something related to Pilates, maybe trying to become a mat instructor. I don't know what it is. It's again something to do with giving back in the fitness space.
I think this is the biggest thing you're doing to give back is this podcast, and I'm not just saying that because it's me, but I'm going to try and make sure that that's my job, is to make sure that this becomes a huge avenue for you to give back, and that's going to be through the number of people we can get through to.
Reach.
The more people that hear this, the more people that see this, everybody is going to get something out of this, and that is my mission for this podcast too, is that maybe every episode is not relevant to everyone, but I know that there are certain episodes that every single person on the planet needs to see, and I think this is going to be one of those. So thank you again, and I want to
Thank you.
So did Lucie get trained for this, or you had to she had to do a full course? She's more qualified than you.
She's really like, she'll have a PhD from Howard or something. No, she's really qualified. I think it's personality driven. Like your dog's personality has to be very outgoing and social. And when we got her, I asked my therapist, because we're a dog family, I said, would it make me feel better if I get a dog? Because she's like, yes, dogs are very powerful and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And here we do everything for our dog ourselves. So we don't outsource it.
Of course.
So she comes to work with me 2 days a week.
How
usually,
nice.
Out of 3, So she's very loving. So I feel like having that person, just a dog to pet, is very relaxing and cathartic. But then for her to bring a smile to someone else's face, like that fills me in a way I can't even describe it. Like it makes me so happy. Like I feel like, oh my God, I just changed someone's life for that moment. Like it's so nice. And there's something very powerful about that.
Beautiful.
So I encourage people to give back.
Thank you. Lucie has also made a guest appearance on the podcast. We got a small glimpse of her in the beginning. What else I wanted to discuss with you we'll come to your fitness really quickly. Yeah, so some of the interesting things that I learned from the book, and this is literally in the first, must be in the first few pages, is that it's very interesting what he opens the book by saying one doesn't have to be a combat soldier or visit a refugee camp in Syria to encounter trauma. Trauma just happens to you and to the people around you. Other things which were shocking on the one hand, but then I was not so surprised on the other hand, and these statistics will be, I would say, in fact I think this would be even more in India. Research by the Centers for Disease Control, which is in the US, has shown that 1 in 5 Americans was sexually molested as a child, 1 in 4 was beaten by a parent, 1 in 3 couples engage in violence, and 25% of people grew up with alcoholic relatives around them. I feel, knowing what's going on in India, and because we are, second largest population, soon to be the largest, I guess, and we never get stats out of China, so I think everything gets like, we are the suicide capital of the world, we are the depression capital of the world, we're the diabetes capital of the world, and that's also because of the kind of population. But what's more worrying is these statistics. Even if these statistics are horrible, even in the US, and this should not be 1 in 5 Americans were sexually assaulted. Easily, you can replicate that to urban areas or whatever areas in India, saying 1 in 5 Indians were sexually molested as a child, and it's important to remember these things, because only then will you be able to do something about it. What else had I made a note on? I had made a note on, we discussed that trauma makes it difficult to engage in intimate relationships.
Lucie.
Don't worry. We like Lucie. She can be part of the podcast. So this is very interesting. I just wrote this one last thing down before, and I want to say that before we come to your fitness regimen, and then we can close the podcast. Sigmund Freud in 1895 said about somebody who, before they had obviously all these terms, that I think this man is suffering from memories.
Yes.
So I think that's the easiest way to describe post-traumatic stress disorder, is to say that this person is suffering from his memories, because that's exactly what it is.
Unpleasant memories.
Yeah. So if you're suffering, I guess it's the unpleasant memories.
Yeah.
I think that was just a beautiful line. I mean, and I'm not a Freudian, and I'm not a fan of Freud, but this is a line that has stuck in my mind. So quickly, I want to just maybe come to what are the things before that. Yeah, are you doing anything specific with RAINN, and what can we do? As we're not in the US, but we're in India. Can we do similar stuff? There are lots of organizations in India too, and I will link them below, that are working on similar issues.
I think it would be, I don't know if it exists, but I think a hotline for people in India would be really nice if someone thinks about creating it. I don't know if it exists.
There is a hotline. There is a
hotline.
child abuse hotline. There is, those hotlines do exist. Honestly, how much of a difference do you think these hotlines make?
Huge amount of difference.
Why?
There are 13, 14-year-old kids that haven't been able to tell anyone that their stepfather has been molesting them.
Okay.
They come on the hotline, and then the hotline says, well, is there anyone in your life that you feel comfortable sharing this with? And they'll say, yeah, I have this aunt. So then that person will get the push to connect with this aunt, and he will or she will tell the story.
Okay.
And so it's really powerful, because no one should have to live that way. No one should have to go through that, especially as a child. For me, having gone through this, I have spent a lot of time, my kids are 7 and 9. Since the age of 4, I've been talking with them about touch. What is appropriate touch? Who can touch you?
About that, yes.
I've had a lot of conversations on what is sex, just enough in terms for them to understand in their language, nothing too detailed, but it's not okay.
Yeah, but
My
as a
kids don't have
parent
babies or
myself, my son turned 3 yesterday, so this is also something that's on my mind, and yes, I am hyper aware of these issues, maybe compared to a normal parent, because I'm unemployed, I have a lot of time on my hands, and because I'm in this space. So can you, was this something you did you read a book about it, or is there like a best practice that we can learn from? And how should I as a parent start telling my child about this touch
So
and good
I
touch
think the
and bad
most
touch and,
important-
this thing?
And the most important thing is to keep it simple to the child's language ability of that age, right? So if your son is 3, in America we say that only doctors are allowed to touch you because they have to check to make sure all the parts are working properly and you don't have any injury or you're not okay. And other than that, no, mama and papa are okay to be in the room if you're changing. But otherwise, no one else is really allowed to see your private parts. They're private because they're private. Like, that conversation started at 3 for me. And then at 4, it became more involved. I bought this book called It's Not the Stork,
Okay.
which is really a book geared towards kids, but it really talks about your body, your different body parts, how our baby's really born. It's not the stork. So I've read parts of this book to both my kids together, separately, as appropriate, as the questions come. Another thing, like, I didn't really grow up talking about touch, what is appropriate. Like, it was just assumed, I don't know, it just didn't exist when I was growing
Of
up.
course not. I didn't get that chat from
We
my
didn't have
parents.
this
No,
conversation.
No way.
We didn't have any conversations about sex.
Neither did we. No.
So the question is, and I've attended workshops at my kids' school just to learn about what is appropriate, what do you deal with. And I think the issue really is, things become an issue when you don't deal with it as an everyday occurrence. Like, people have sex. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a way for 2 people to show that they love each other. Now, what you want to teach your maybe 6th grader is that, because 6th grade is when they might become sexually active, or 7th grade.
Please don't tell me this.
Yeah. But it's just to say, when you're in a relationship, make sure it's pleasurable to both people. Don't feel the pressure. Like, so there are different tools and strategies you can engage, but also have a conversation in settings where it's not like, oh, let's sit on the bed and have this conversation. It's more like, okay, you're going in a car. It's as easy as saying, oh,
It's the same spirit of teaching them how to cross the road safely.
yeah, same spirit as, oh, we're going to go to Italy on vacation this year. But, oh, do you know that sometimes kids are touched inappropriately and it could be by a teacher?
Okay.
Same, it's not like I've had this conversation once and I'm done. You're never done with it.
Right.
You're never done with safety. You're never done
Sure.
with. So you have to keep repeating it so that the kids feel like, okay, it's really like immersed in our head. And not only that, they might have friends who might share something with them, because kids at a young age talk a lot. Maybe the kid hasn't shared, that kid hasn't shared with someone else. You want that your kid to be the child who comes to you and says, hey, I heard this from my friend and I don't think it's okay because you've taught me better.
Right.
So what are the resources that you would recommend? So
Keep talking. I'm listening to you. Keep talking. Yeah.
so we have a lot of conversations in my house about just touch and what is appropriate touch, how you shouldn't be sitting, on people's laps. And here in America, like, it's amazing. You can go on like certain websites and you can plug in sexual predators, and then whoever's a registered sexual offender, you can actually see where they live.
Right.
Like,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Which is also quite powerful and really scary. But this is the world you live in, So
Oh, it's a scary
while in
world
India,
for sure, and I think it's better for parents to believe it's a scary world, and because even if, I mean, for me, what's the impact that we want to make through this podcast is, I think, even if one kid, one person, one child can be prevented, or can be protected against having an experience like you did, or millions of other people do, I would consider that to be a success.
a win.
And if that is about scaring parents into it, so be it, man. Get scared, because
It's a scary subject, and it is scary what happens. But I think also, I remember really vividly when I was a teenager, I was a really, really angry person. Like, I could not talk to my parents. Like, there were like screaming matches in my house. I was usually screaming, no one else was. I was just so mad. But now I look back and say, I was not just me being a normal teen.
Sure.
it was me trying to process what had happened to me. So if someone notices something, your kid is acting in a way that maybe is not appropriate for their age and it feels a little bit more extreme, don't disregard it. Like, reach out to your kid. Maybe ask someone else to reach out. Like, take your kid to a kid's therapist to say,
Right.
maybe they feel more comfortable having a conversation with someone else. Don't just disregard and say, oh, it's the age, they're being a teenager, they'll turn around when they turn like 18. No, they might not. Maybe they're scarred for life, or maybe they have something so deep inside them that's making them feel so ashamed or embarrassed that they can't address it, but they really want to, and this is their way of it manifesting.
Providing your children with the confidence and the tools and be able to successfully share, or to be confident enough to share anything with you as a parent. And of course, I'm not getting into that area at all, which is covered extensively in the book about the kids that have to deal with their own parents abusing them, and
Yep.
That's I think that's a full podcast on its own. But even if we can, because unfortunately, most of these instances, and this is a statistic globally, not just child abuse, but even anybody who's sexually attacked or molested, raped, it's a lot of times it's someone known to them, or most of the time it's
usually
someone
is most of the time.
known to them, which is also very scary.
Yeah.
But it's information that we need to keep in mind before
Yeah.
we teach our kids,
Yeah.
take the right steps to protect them. And I just feel that I'm so grateful to you to have agreed to come on the podcast and to share your story. And what's more important is, other than share your story, is to people can see that you are who you are. You are a survivor. You're a well-functioning adult. You have two beautiful kids. You've got a husband that you've been annoying for 20 years, 17 plus years, or 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. And I think that's what's most important, and to continuously keep learning from people like you. I'd rather that I learn more from real people like you versus perhaps an expert, or perhaps, of course, I'd love to get the guy who wrote this book. He would
You
be
can go on a course.
unbelievable to get him, because I just found the way he writes, and it's just fascinating,
Yeah.
his experience with all this. But I'm grateful to you, and there are lots and lots and lots of learnings from this podcast. I can see the timer evolved like 1 hour and 25 minutes. So I don't know. I think it's going to be similar post the edit. And I can go on. And we missed talking about your fitness regimen, but we spoke about that in the beginning, and your nutritional regimen. But I think there is so much information for people to process from this. So I'm going to close it, leave it at that. I want to really thank you again, and please put me on the list for the okay people to
When I
meet
visit.
when you come to Delhi, and we'll be in touch. And I'm going to share the work that you've been doing with RAINN in
Yeah.
links in the podcast, so that people want to learn more about RAINN or contribute to RAINN. And I think there's a lot of synergies perhaps with RAINN with other organizations that I know here. So I'll also try and see what we can do to put RAINN in touch with a sister organization in India.
That would
So
be awesome.
thank you everyone for tuning into Voices in My Head. We've recorded for so long, one of my cameras has gone off, so I don't know which camera to look in now. But thank you for tuning into Voices in My Head. I am really grateful to Ashna for coming on the podcast and sharing her story and sharing her life. She is a survivor. We all need to learn and become survivors. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't, because that's going to help me out a lot. And we will catch you later next time. See you guys. Bye.
Voices in My Head is created and hosted by Yameer Adhar. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. We disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects that may arise from any information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guests' qualifications or credibility. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.